Welcome, all YouTube viewers joining us here today. We've got another Doc Talk, and today we're joined by a fellow company out in here in British Columbia on the West Coast. A few of us out here are advocates or big fans of boating, and in this instance of sailing. Precision Loft Sail, based in Victoria, British Columbia, on the other side from Vancouver. Sailmaker specializing in the producing custom sails for all types of sailors. Their commitment to quality, satisfaction, and innovation have helped transform the future of sailmaking. After 9 years of strong growth, they've got now 22 employees in their head office in Sidney, BC, as well as a production loft overseas to provide custom sails for sailors around the world. Darryl, thanks for joining us. President, CEO, head designer, sail washer, sail trimmer, and captain. Born and raised in BC, actually in North Vancouver here, and also in southern Vancouver Island. After high school, Darryl joined the Canadian Coast Guard, working on the west coast of Canada. By the way, anybody who hasn't been up here west coast of Canada has a lot to offer to cruisers. He started Precision Sails in 2012 after recognizing a need for the support of cruisers around the world. And Ron joining us as well. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
Director of Sales and Marketing for Precision Sails. Born and raised in Ontario. Moved to BC after university, like I did, same here. Headed out west right as soon as I got a chance. Moved to Vancouver Island and has fully embraced the life of the sea. It's explainable. Sailing, fishing, crabbing, and just spending time exploring the Gulf Islands. Ron joined Precision Sails in 2015 and focused on developing a team that helps sailors make informed buying decisions for their sails. Welcome, Ron, and welcome, Darryl. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, very excited.
Awesome. So I guess this is kind of interesting for the listeners out there. We found each other by not necessarily collaborating together, but collaborating with similar clients and noticing how the internet is enabling all of us, and that's including us boaters, to get help and services from people that are outside our geographic area. So it sounds like we have a lot in common in sort of our geographic reach. You guys want to talk a little bit about how your team is positioning itself to really expand beyond the local market, where most marine industries were just basically helping boaters that were just around the door, around the corner. I mean, I guess the point is, I'm just trying to see, because it's a different approach, right? I mean, I don't think a lot of us could have been doing this 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. 20 years ago, I remember doing most of my things on my sailboat. It was, honestly, it was email sort of forums. You would get an email in your inbox, and, I still have tens of thousands of those emails, and people were just helping each other either on boards, right? Forums. And that was the extent of remote help back then. And I'm trying to get a sense, tell us a little bit about what Precision Sails did and how it's helping these boaters everywhere.
I started the business, and it was really the only option that made any sense, is to go this path. Because when I started selling to clients that weren't in the same location, we really wanted to keep the focus on customer service and everything that is needed from a client's point of view. And even from the very first thing we set up, it was set up to be able to communicate and work with clients on a broad location base. And it kept going down that path. I knew I had some goals that I wanted to work on, and we went with the mindset of technology and building systems and processes from day one. It was a process-based, planning of how we were going to grow the company, not I'm going to go and shake hands with the guy down the road and we're going to build that relationship. I looked at it from a different point of view than a lot of the marine industry, companies do, where this is a limited market in Sydney. How many sails could I possibly sell in one market? Yeah, I was just saying it was in the plans from the beginning, because that's what I wanted to do with the company. And as you may have learned, because we do similar things, it's really the way forward. And being able to successfully connect with clients, and not on a surface level, really connecting with them from the whole process. That's what's needed, and that's what everyone's looking for. So we looked at it and fulfilled that need, and that's what led us down this path.
Yeah, so it sounds like from the get-go, you were thinking of online as being one of your sort of main channels for getting to Yacht. We happened, honestly, we got there by coincidence. So I don't think we take credit for it. We had voters that couldn't come to the boat shows. People couldn't come to our presentations and ask, hey, could you be able to, record the presentation and send us a file or post it on the internet and we can see it. And it just started from even local voters are not all local, right? Some people are on the Sunshine Coast. They're not that close to you. It's a ferry away. It's not a 30-minute or 15-minute drive. There could be 2-3 hours. And the same thing with Vancouver Island. I mean, it's a big place.
A long way to get something done on your boat.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. So, Ron, do you want to tell me a little bit about what makes the niche of Sail Loft so different, and what's the opportunity and the challenges that you face dealing with boaters every day and with precision sails?
Yeah. So one of the things that precision sales is found as an opportunity is the cruising market. Um, there's a lot of opportunity out there for racers to get full service from their local lofts because they buy sails on a regular basis. What we've found is that to a certain degree, the cruising market is a little underserviced. So what we've kind of developed is an easy way for a cruiser to educate themselves, an easy way for them to get some budget numbers so that they can start planning their process and when they're going to need sales and when to buy. And then we've also come up with a really good system where the sailor himself can take on part of the project. So there is this kind of idea out there that sales are this ridiculously complex thing that goes on your sailboat, and then a professional has to 100% take care of it for you. What we've done is we've kind of allowed the DIY sailors, the cruisers, to be able to participate in it, starting from conversations with our staff here to educate them on sailcloth and what's best for their boat and where they sail. But then taking it to the next level, once we've started the process, we get the sailor down to his boat. We provide them with a very simple measurement form, how-to videos on how to get these measurements off your boat so that you're not reliant on a professional, a sail designer. So those measurements come back into our system, and what we do is we call it checking your homework. So we don't rely on a new guy sailing to provide all the perfect information, but what we do is we then take the information off their unique boat, as all boats are unique. We check their homework by comparing it to other sails that we've built for those boats, the rig specs on file for them, all that stuff. So we're walking them through this process where they participate in it all the way through to Darryl's end of the company, where they participate in the design. They get to talk about, I'm a 6'7" sailor and I keep getting hit in the head with my boom. Well, we can design a sail that makes it so that your boom's raised up a little bit, or the angle is changed so that your hat stays on every time you tack. Those little things. So that's our little niche where we get to get the sailor involved in the process. It's not purchasing a sweater and hope it fits. It's making a customized product for, we like to say, for the sailor, for the sailor's boat, and the area that they're sailing in. With all of those things come into the process and in the decision making, the designing of a sail, so that sailor gets what's going to work for him, right?
And often asking clients to go do things on their boat, we get thanked for it after. And can you take the drum height on your furling system? It's a really simple measurement. You don't need to be an expert, but you have to give us what we're asking for. We see when you try and play with the numbers to make sure we don't make a mistake. We'll ask you about that in a lot of cases. Something doesn't seem right, and they come back and say, "Well, yeah, I didn't want you to make a mistake, so I did some other number." Well, we've got processes in place to deal with that, except in like the clients come back to us and often say, "Thanks, I learned so much that I had no
Mm,
idea about my boat, and it's sitting right there." And
yeah.
now they know what all of that gear is, not I just pulled the rope and the sail came out. They've learned about it and how it works, and just like little things. They're not big, we're not asking for anything like too wild. We're saying, here's what we need, and we get pictures
Yeah.
alongside, and we measure. If you send us a picture of your boat and you send us a measurement that we don't trust, we'll measure the picture to tell you that there's no way that that measurement actually works. We need you to do it again. And
Yeah.
right,
Validate. Yeah.
having those cool tools and measuring tools that we've been building up and working on adds to that. Like
Mm.
they like it, they enjoy it, they see the challenge, they learn about things.
It's really neat. And again, it's about putting little pieces of the puzzle together, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes, the puzzle is made out of 1,000 pieces. Every piece doesn't really matter, but it sort of does. It all adds to the picture. And then I don't know, you feel, that's the one thing. You feel less dumb the more you know, right? You can talk right terminology. You understand what they're doing. Again, it doesn't seem like much, but a boat is thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of a puzzle.
Yeah.
Just understanding the terminology. What are things? What are they doing? I can't imagine what a kid is like on a sailboat asking mom or dad, "What's this? What's this? What's this?" Like, you'd be like, "Okay, slow down. We're gonna divide this in time. We got a multi-year program. We're gonna get you there." And the terminology is different. It's like everything is different. It's like, okay, this is that. What does that do? And you're like, oh, I don't even know. Let me find out. And then it's sort of that youthful curiosity that is out there, that as we grow as adults, sometimes we stop asking those questions, but being, like you say, being told, hey, why don't you get that measurement or the drum? And they're like, oh, what is that? And then you start figuring out, you're like, okay, it's not as intimidating as I thought as I get to know it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really good.
uh, Boaters, sailboaters in particular, are inquisitive people, right? They like to understand how things work. They want to understand why they're buying what they're buying, how to install it, how to take it down, all that process. And that's been part of our success is tapping into that sailor mentality of I want to understand this stuff, and our
Mm,
provides enough information to educate yourself. And if you don't quite, you need a little hand, pick up the phone. We're here. We answer the phone. We answer emails. And we help them through the process. And that's
yeah.
it's one of the things, especially brand new boaters, first boat. They love. They're scared to take the measurements because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake and that we're not going to catch it. But after the process, they put the new sails on. We get these responses back for them with photos that they won their local race or what have you. But the process of going through and working with your designer and doing the measurements and all that stuff, it's a tremendous learning opportunity to get to know
Way more
people.
fulfilling.
It's way
Way
more.
more fulfilling. Way more fulfilling. I mean, it's like the joys of skiing are not seeing other people ski.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter how much you suck at it. Once you start doing any sport, anything on your own, it's like getting on a surfboard for a second.
yeah,
It's awesome. You know,
amazing.
and you're not doing what a pro does. You'll never do it. It doesn't matter. But you got on a board for 2 seconds.
Yeah,
You felt it. And that it's not about the sensation where you have to be the pinnacle of achievement to get the sensation. It's like anything else. You go, oh my God, like riding a mountain bike, maybe not a super steep trail, but even in like I did that in Vegas, out in Nevada. Just, you're running out, you're like, oh my God, that was awesome. Again, my little milestone, my little personal Everest, you know? And it's only about pushing your own boundaries and being part of something.
Yeah.
And again, you're totally right. It's, even taking measurements, and you're like, I was part of this.
Exactly.
Like I did it, like I had an input and I pulled it off.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like, I was part of this solution some way. I didn't create it, but I was in the input of it. And I think that's the so fulfilling part.
Yeah.
So many aspects of voting. Another question I'm sort of curious about is, do you want to kind of, maybe without going too great depth, but enough to give context to voters, how do you go about educating voters in all the choice of sailcloth out there? Earlier you mentioned that there's over 100 different types of background. That's what I heard, maybe I misheard, but how do you go, with that much choice, how does one narrow down the selection to something that seems where they can actually, it almost feels like going to a clothing store. I remember going to Nordstrom's and I'm like literally seeing like there's 3,000 shirts. I'm like, I can't do this. Like I'm out. Like there's way too much choice. Like where am I going to start? How do you start narrowing down where the possibilities are now feasible? Like you can actually so how do you walk a voter through all of those choices?
Yeah. It really comes down to how, getting to know the voter a little bit, what he wants to do with his boat. We do try to give voters, some people like to have conversations on the phone, some people like to do the email thing, and some people just 11 o'clock at night, they're doing the research online, they want to read about it. So we try to provide as much information as we can. But personally, the thing that I get, so much joy out of and pleasure out of is helping people choose the right cloths for their boat, their area, the type of sailing they're doing. So, as to racing sails, I think we represent 65, 75 different cloth options from 5 different companies. And it gets very technical. But when you dial it down to what do you want from performance, what are you willing to do for maintenance on your sail? How are you going to treat that sail? Where are you going to store the sail? And you start throwing some good examples of the difference between a carbon-based sail, and a polyester-based sail. One's going to perform better than the other. One may or may not reach into your budget. One is a little bit easier and a little bit more forgiving to put on a furler and flake on a boom. Those types of questions start to bring out the proper cloth for that person, right? And then in the cruising world, it gets, believe it or not, even more complicated because there are a full range. The old Dacron sails have evolved over the past 40, 50 years to a ridiculously complex, from the outside looking in, choice. It is, as you said earlier, we're up to about 100 different Dacrons. Now they come in different weights. They come in different, cross cut versus radial cuts. Some cloths are better in freshwater. Some are better in salt. Some are better in heavy UV areas like the Caribbean. Some are great for the little weekend cruiser that you get to the cottage 6 times a year, right? So there's a cloth out there for everyone. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what's the plan for the boat, what's going to work for you, what's going to work for your budget, all of that stuff. And then the real technical stuff comes from Darryl's end of the business. When it gets to the design, there's similar cloths. Cloths are woven different ways for high aspect or low aspect sails. Tri-radial sails are a completely different monster altogether there. So it's something that you can educate yourself on by yourself. But I really like to get a sailor on the phone and start chipping away at some of these questions that, you take 20 minutes on the phone and we can narrow down a quote to the point where we're in the budget that you need to be in. The sail's going to last the amount of time that you need it to last. Could be a 5-year boat for you, could be a 50-year boat. This is my forever boat. Right? It could be, again, sailing Great Lakes, circumnavigating the world. Those are different cloths, right, for different needs. Yeah. So
With
very similar to what we do. Very similar. Asking questions is the way to sort of connect and narrow down the options so that you enable that voter to not have too much choice
that's
at one end, because otherwise it's just you gotta you got to take some stuff off the table.
Yeah.
There's just it's all on the table in the beginning, but
It's
through
yeah.
selection and understanding exactly all the requirements, then some options get removed, and then eventually you still have to make a decision. But then the decision is limited to a reasonable amount of choices. You don't have to choose, 100 different things.
We really try to remove all the technical jargon.
Yeah,
It's one of the things in our industry, and I'm sure your industry.
same.
When you get people that are in it, living it all day, every day, the jargon it goes away. They just understand it. But a sailor just wants to sail, and he just wants to find the best sail he can that's going to work for what he wants to do, right? And that's where I think that consultation comes in, where we'll deal with the jargon. You just talk to us about sail, what you want to do.
Yeah,
The designers are trained to make sure that what they're designing is correct. So in Dacrons, you're going to have one that the weave isn't as tight. The elongation on the cloth is different than another. So how you're stretching it on angles to create different shapes along the way really plays into effect on what we're doing with the sail. And we think about and talk about and things like the loom size in the cloth. What does that mean for a sailor if there's a larger loom, the weave on that one versus this cloth? And what is that going to give you, and what is that going to look like in 5 years? Because there will be a difference, and why. So the design team goes into all of those details on different categories that we have and different options in the categories, and why one is made for what you're doing and one is made for a racer. We also get into on racing boats, why is a carbon sail more expensive? What does that even mean versus a polyester sail? And guess what? They look the same in so many cases. They're pre-made in a roll, or you're doing a custom strung sail where you're laying fibers out on a CNC table and laminating it. It's the same thing. We have a film on the outside and we have something on the inside. There's a scrim and your fibers, depending on how dense those are and what's inside, they're all the same. So now the designers will break down, okay, you want a carbon sail for this application, it might not make sense. So they go through the cloth again and just double check that we're really doing it. So the right steps for the client, right?
Education,
So
right? The ability to learn, so powerful. It's rewarding. Yeah, awesome. It's a good one. It's again so similar to what we do. So similar. It's amazing. It's like you get to know enough businesses, that most businesses live very similar. No matter, even we're here boating, but we do the same thing in different industries, and you start realizing patterns. There's a lot of things that repeat that are very similar. They're transferable skills. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Good one. Initially,
yeah,
I guess I'm wondering the reach out and the community that you're able to create virtually. How's that been working out for your outfit, and how are you able to reach out all these voters and connect with them without being in person with them?
Yeah, so we have built up a lot of tools and processes to sort of optimize it. We're continually doing that, but once you can get the connection with a client, you have to prove yourself to get that connection, and then they open up and they feel comfortable, and that's when you really have built the start of a community for us. And so going back to when I started, the very first website that we had was built because the industry wasn't able to provide actual quotes to clients in a timely manner. And right on launch day, we knew that we needed to quote and we needed to be efficient at it and make them nice and make them work. We've tried different angles and we've switched and adjusted things, but providing that first initial contact really opens up all the doors, because when they're waiting weeks for a quote and we're a new company providing a quote and then making the next step of connection right after, it makes them go, okay, let's at least talk to them. And that's when we were able to say, okay, you we want to talk to you, we want to understand you, your boat, what you're doing, and revise the quote, because the quote that we got was just to get you talking to us. And
Right.
now we're on the phone, we can ask questions, resend it, tailor that portion to what you need. And really, a lot of clients come to us now and they know that they want to be asking these questions. They know that we're happy to answer them. So we go through one by one and knock off what's needed. And all of that information in the background, we're building to give to our designers. And if they move forward with an order, we've just documented all of their needs. So we've started out right, we've built that relationship. They understand that we care about the fine details. We talk about stitching. We talk about, everything from the threads to the headboards, every little bit. Well, that same process and confidence has to be built throughout the whole process. It can't just be in the sales side before you sell a product. That's when you service the client. And I started doing it years ago, screen sharing with clients. So I would be designing a sail and I would be very busy. Well, the fastest solution was, here's a link, here's what I'm talking about, here's the design, let's go through that. Is this what you're looking for? Because if I go and take a screenshot and I send an email, it's not effective, it's not efficient. It gets really confusing when you have a lot of emails asking little details. And we evolved into, okay, well, why don't we add that as a part of our process? And now the client's involved for us. It's been really cool, actually, because a lot of the clients get excited to talk to our designers. They get assigned a designer. They can call him. It's, everything we do is like one-on-one, building relationships and explaining the whole process. So there's very few, or well, I don't know anyone that's doing design consults like us, where we look at the shape of the sail with the client. We look at the roach, we adjust the roach, we suggest changes while we're designing the sail. And we go through and we really talk about details that matter about the fit, but also about the shape and what they're looking for. A lot of clients don't necessarily know what they're looking for. So that's how we've done it. And it just kind of evolves and just keeps going throughout the whole process. And like I said, it started from the sales point. We thought, well, that's a great idea. And everyone's happy and comfortable with that. Let's just keep it going and grow the rest of it like that. So it's pretty neat to watch.
It certainly sounds where, and we've seen the same thing on our side, dealing, even though it's not sail making, but even on the electrical, where people want to be part of the process, right? I think as boaters, and I think about my own journey, and I think about how much I wanted to understand what was around me more than just a user. I think a lot of times, you think about a lot of things in our lives, we know how to operate it, but we don't really truly understand why it is the way it is. Could have we changed it? And I think that journey through education and learning is really probably one of the most fulfilling parts of being a boat owner. It's also one of the most expensive parts. But
And
if you put that aside, I think hearing you talk about it, I can see how that's very, not for everyone, but for a subset of voters that want to be part of the conversation, they want to drive outcomes. They want to have something tailored to what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you can have a production boat that is definitely not production after you've tailored it or individual it to your cruising needs.
Yeah.
And just hearing you talk about it, I think it's really, I think that's one of the most beautiful parts of boating is the ability to learn and then create something that's for you. And I don't think there's a lot of products like that in everyday life. You think about a home, you know, most of us are not going to have custom built furniture, custom built cars, custom built anything. Like really, it's off the rack. And if it's not off the rack, you're not, take something else off the rack.
Yeah.
But I think those individual, especially this pairing up with the designer, like you're talking, I can see that people must be like, oh my God, this is heaven. I'm going to be talking about my sales with someone and we're going to decide and you're running through the pros and cons of each decision. And I'm going to get to decide based on information I'm given on what works and what doesn't work and what's this versus that. That's to a boater. I mean, that's to some of us, certainly myself, that's heaven. That's absolutely heaven.
It's pretty neat. Let's say you buy a head sail and you get the opportunity and you get questions about the sheeting angles and the track positions, and we look at it for as a specific boat. Okay, this boat, the client is most likely cruising. What does he want out of that? And we get to ask him, do you want your clue height to have a bit more visibility? What are you, where are you going? What are you needing from it? So they get to say, I would like it just above the lifelines, and we can show them where the lifelines are and where their sail sits, and they get it. It's they get excited because when they see the design and they see what we've done, it all comes together. Everything that they've said to us, what the design is communicating, and they get to make, like you said, those little adjustments in their clue heights, and we get to talk to them. And I think that's the best connection. Now, there is a portion of our clientele that are looking for a sale and they just want a nice product and they have faith that we'll do a good job, and that's great. We still pepper them with questions. We still want to make it as custom as we can, and we go down that path when needed. But it's really cool, the design portion of it.
Yeah. We even start that process early on, like our quoting system that we built out through the years when it first started has gotten quite robust where we can now at step one, which for a lot of us boaters is budgeting, is that I'm getting to the end of my lifespan of my sales. What is this going to cost to replace? We provide a quote in a very short period of time to the tune of minutes, that we can get a quote that will give you options and help educate you about the cloth that's available. And every day I'm on the phone talking to sailors. They bought their last set of sails 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm sure in the electronics industry as well. You don't replace this stuff every other weekend. It's 10 years.
Thank God.
15 years, exactly. Right. And so even if you have bought sails in the past, you need to stop, re-educate yourself, learn what changes have happened in that industry. Dacron has advanced. There's hundreds of different types of Dacron available out there, which is just straight cruising cloth. That's where we start, is trying to build this education so that they're making informed decisions. And our average customer is 6 to 8 months before they buy sails from the start of the process. It's
it's a journey.
There's the odd guy in the middle of summer rips a sail, needs one. But most boaters tend to be thinkers and tinkerers, and we plan things out to the best we can. So we know when we need to replace our main sails and head sails and spinnakers, and so we start with a budget and an education and take it from there. And that's one thing we focused on heavily, is trying to help these guys learn.
It's a big purchase.
It's huge.
No matter what, it's a huge part of the sailboat. It's an important purchase. So they want to know the details. They need to. Financial details for budgeting and the cloth, everything. It's such an important decision for them. Right?
Yeah. How do the potential like voters that come across your team, Is there a lot of sharing or community before they get and reach out to you? Are they coming, most of them, are most boaters sort of getting ready and absorbing and then reaching out, or are they reaching out and then absorbing, or is it a mixture of both? How are they going about the learning process to educate
Yeah,
themselves as to
yeah, yeah.
what's Dacron and what, all these different things that to us maybe, especially an expert like yourselves, obviously you know all the choices, but how do they go about learning about all these different things that they can choose or influence or change?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been working on, we just launched a new website. That took us quite a while to build that out, and we built it out with exactly what you said in mind. Is that I just bought myself a Tanzer 26, and I got it from some guy down the street that stopped sailing and it needs sails. I've never bought sails before in my life, so
Mm,
you start googling, right? And so we started putting up as much information in blog posts and information about Dacrons and racing sails and all the cloth options that are available, so that people can, at their leisure, educate themselves. And what we find is after several, visits to our blog, visits to our website, they then trigger over to, okay, now I'm ready to look at pricing. And they've kinda got themselves to a point where, hey, Precision Sales provided a whole bunch of information to me. Now let's see if let's look at the price, see what we can get. Right. So
yeah.
that's what we see as kind of our customer base is moving that way. But we do get a lot of questions on Facebook and Instagram. We like to share obviously pictures that our sailors send back to us. We share those on through social, and we utilize YouTube as much as we can for a lot of that content as well. We've got our own little blog posts that we put up called Ask Precision Sales, which is around that, building that community. I got a question about a preventer. How do I put in a preventer? What is a preventer? Why would I need one? All that type of stuff. Right? Yeah.
It's yeah, it's such a good point that you bring there. The As a boater, I think I even always imagine myself, that earning some, gaining someone's trust is as a fellow boater is really, really important, right? And how do you do that without being in sales mode? Sales is really, to me, and probably it's the end. It's just a transaction part of something about a relationship. And yes, of course, there is an exchange, and people are agreeing on, okay, here's value, here's something I value. Let's trade. Um, but that's really the end. End. The real hard part is being able to establish some sort of rapport with someone or demonstrate a level of expertise where that person feels comfortable going, okay, let's go down the path together. You've had success stories here and there. I also want to go down a path and provide all this sort of costs, and then the outcome is positive. And I think you're right. The online, to me, it's almost, I got raised in a small little village, and I think about the consequences of doing a good action in a small village and the consequences of doing a bad decision in a village. You can't run away from your problems, right? And I think the internet, YouTube, and all these different means that we get to connect with one another helps flush out the bad and keep the people that are putting their best foot forward, the return customers, because people over time, they want to go to some place where they know that they're going to be whole. And Yeah, testimonials are huge. It's such a great way for a boater to go through. It's hard to read a magazine. I remember when I started boating, I had magazine subscriptions to every single magazine as a way to just soak it up. How do you learn all these things? And the testimonials from other boaters is another method, right? I mean, that's really good. So tell me, how does YouTube play and as a way to connect with boaters for precision sales? Like,
Eh,
tell us a little bit more about it.
So I want to comment on a couple things there, but the YouTube, I went into it with a goal of building relationships, not a goal of here's $500, to we work with you. And we went into it and said, okay, we need to tell people that we're humans. We need to that was the goal at the beginning. And we used to joke about this and say, people need to know that we're real people and we actually care. We're not on their computer. And we ended up talking to and becoming friends with a lot of people that we now work with daily, weekly, partner with, and we do a bunch of things with those guys outside of what you guys may think and or what it may look like from the outside, and so coming at it from an angle of we're looking to say to get you to help us tell people that we're real people because that's what they want to know.
It's so true that I mean that's what everyone wants, local or remote. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about service, right? It's about knowing that you're not going to be alone.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not like an individual person can solve that problem on their own. So I mean,
Well,
it's one thing to notice it.
what you said,
But
you
clear,
grew up in a small town.
yeah,
Although, we offer our sales worldwide. The internet has become a really small town.
exactly.
You get an opportunity to voice your opinion of whether that company did a good job for you or not. And if you think you can just sell something online and forget about it, marinas are tiny little places. If a sailor isn't happy with the product you supplied and the follow up and the feedback and all that stuff isn't there for him, everybody in that marina knows about it.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Good behavior is rewarded, bad behavior is punished.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be. There's nothing more natural than that. It's yeah. Of course, we all have bad days, and not everything's perfect, and that's why there's a little bit of color everywhere in the world. But
There's humans.
that's not a bad thing. That's actually a pretty good model. Everybody, their only crooks would be okay with that model. Everyone else is like, yeah, I'll take it. So I'll be rewarded if I do well and I take care of my clients, and if I don't, I'm not going to be rewarded, and probably I'm going to pay a bigger price because how does that sound? Does it sounds totally fair? Even as a voter, you're like, okay, get it, yeah, absolutely. And people, I think it's funny as voters, you get to that point in life where you also want other people that are good to succeed. You get a lot of people, and it goes beyond just the transaction. There is a community again, and when you're on the water, and we're lucky here because in British Columbia, it's one of the boating places, but not all boaters are located in a location where they're surrounded with outfits that can service their needs. Right? Not every boater is blessed with being in a high density of marine outfits that are there to service them. And for those boaters, this is where the online, I think, is so incredible. You could literally be in a small town on the coast somewhere, or not even be on the coast. We have boaters that are in Kentucky, everywhere in the state, lake boating. It doesn't matter. There's not enough boaters like them in their city or in their village or in their area to warrant having an outfit there that is tailored to service all the boaters because there's not enough. But then you end up being, someone remote, further away. But as long as you keep your word, and they know they have the ability of also keeping you honest, there's a way for those people to get services. Otherwise, where would they go? Some people would turn them away. They're like, "Oh, you're not here? Sorry, I can't help you. You got to be local, or else I can't provide a service." And that's hard as a boarder because then you feel really low.
It's a big chunk of our client base is in the prairies, middle America. Lots of lake sailors out there with trailer sailors and that kind of thing. There isn't sail lofts anywhere near them, and
Yeah.
they're out there. There's three other guys with sailboats on the lake, and they help each other the best they can. They rent cranes to put masts up in the spring and things like that. But there isn't that local marine industry because, as you said, it's not big enough to support them. So companies like ours be able to do this remotely using just simple technology, phone, email, video chats like this. We do a lot of video conferencing with our customers, trying to understand their needs and trying to find a solution.
Yeah, the the understanding is the key, because there's so many different ways that people use their boats. You know, you can't say you haven't seen it all, but there's so many permutations.
every single day.
Yeah, so many permutations, so many permutations. And again, that's the beauty of boating.
Yep.
That's what makes it so. Like, I just remember even doing anything custom on a boat. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be cushions, it could be against sails, it could be a canvas, it could be Dodger, it could be the hull color, the stripe. It's like the choices are endless. And in that endless choice, there's a lot of creativity that can go into solutioning and tailoring and thinking, okay, what am I trying to challenge? Where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? What makes sense on my priority list for this year? What are the most pressing problems? And to be able to be part of that is absolutely beautiful. So when you're out boating and you start talking to other boaters, it's almost like boating brings the best out of us. The sense of community, the sense of, helping, just, it doesn't matter. You've got boaters that, maybe on land, you never connect with someone else, across any sort of, whatever you want to call it, spectrum of divide, if you want to look at it. Like, how can we, differentiate ourselves from one another? What's your opinion on this? Oh, my opinion is that. But on the water, it's funny. It's almost like a melting pot. It doesn't matter what your income level is. It doesn't matter what your political views are. It doesn't matter all these different things. And boaters are out there. They know that when you're on the water, you're way more safer if you're in a community than if you're on your own. It's not like being on land. And I think that actually goes back to your point. It actually extends beyond just boating. It extends with how people treat other businesses that support the boating. And that mindset, it sounds like it brings so much the best out of us. I always think about, just for myself on a boat, I think it's where I'm the happiest. And it's probably where I'm also the nicest. Like, you just become a different person. And I think when boaters are in their, it's almost like being a headspace. You're there and you're thinking about boating. It just brings cooperation, collaboration, just sort of this positive vibe, because most of the time when we're boating, it's bliss. It's doesn't matter if you're a sailboat or powerboater. It doesn't matter if you're a racer or cruiser. All those things, again, are just divisions. It's just, you're on the water and you're having a moment for you. That is so special. And I think we see the same thing with our clients and boaters. You see how some of them interact with you day to day when things go sideways. And that's those relationships, again, like you said, Darryl, when I see someone where we screwed up and they don't kick us when we're down and they give us an opportunity to make it right, oh man, do I go out of my way to make sure it's almost like I'm putting my cape down over I'm being a total gentleman. I'm going full on. I'm like, oh no, we're going to make this right. Again, bringing the best out of us, right? And that's, again, one of the big advantages of this marine industry is that, I don't know, you get boaters in such a good mood that they just, most of them, and obviously there's always exceptions, but the large part, people are extremely appreciative.
They love their
making their
boats.
boating better.
They love talking about their boats. They love working on their boats. They love, anyone that's willing to lend them a hand on fixing little problems. I can only imagine when you go boating and tell people what you do for a living, you get a lot of questions.
Yeah, sometimes I have to say, sometimes when I go boating, my hat is down and I've got my glasses on, and they're like, "Is that you?" I'm like, "You who?" They're like, "You want to come down to the boat? I've got a problem." Yeah, it's it's got its good sides and bad sides, but mostly it's good. It's pretty awesome. During the daytime, during weekday, no problem. But if I'm out boating, now of course there's exceptions to all the rule. It all depends. I like the haphazard ones. I like the ones where you're down somewhere and you're like, "Hey, does anybody know how to troubleshoot a starter problem?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Yeah, okay, let's go." And it's the same thing, right? Everybody helping others is got to be one of the most fulfilling activities that certainly myself I could ever undertake. Being of service to others is, the paycheck is good, But honestly, a paycheck without the validation of helping others have a better time, living their dreams, it's not the same. It's just not. Some people, of course, may be motivated more, but the being of service is a huge aspect, especially in something like voting where you make them so potentially happy. It's the reward is just, it just fills you up. It just sort of just, it's so satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say one of the biggest questions I get in the marina that my boat's in is people ask me to come inspect their sails. And it's one of those things, to see if they need new ones, see if they're going to make this trip. Are they going to last? They're going to go around Vancouver Island or what have you. And it's one of those things that I get a lot of pride out of helping people kind of evaluate where they are in their sail life because of the safety aspect of it and the enjoyment. There's nothing worse than being remote on the west coast of Canada, ripping a mainsail in two, and now what? And it was all a matter of I just needed somebody's opinion because I don't know how to evaluate my sails. That's one of the things that I like. I'll always hop on a guy's boat and say, hey, this one, you got a good year, 2 years in her. Be careful, but start planning.
It's you often find that when you're doing that, there's easy solutions to make things work for a while if there is an issue, but the clients don't know. They can't see those solutions because they don't know what they would
Of
be.
course.
They've never seen them. And you might go down, it could be as simple of, tying a piece of rope through this grommet and using it in a different way, or connecting two pieces with a piece of dyneema, and you'll be fine. And then we'll deal with it when you're around. And just pointing out some of those things, it's different in every scenario, but you've seen so many, you've seen someone try something or how it will work, that's a big help. Is not necessarily the sail is if you inspect it and it's got an issue, well, there's probably something we could quickly do to make it so you're safe. You can get out there and we'll deal with it after, but you just have to provide those. And we do that actually quite a bit. If we do make a mistake, we look at it, we ask for pictures, and we get the design team involved, and they often have a meeting and they go, well, there's nothing we can do right now. You were in this remote country on this island, but here's what you're going to do. XYZ, we'll show you what we want. And now we have a solution for now. And then we plan on dealing with it when they're back or in a different location. So there's a lot that you can help with on the docks like that, I guess.
Yeah, it's very similar. Honestly, you're speaking, and it could apply to the portion of the business we're in on a boat on the electrical, right? It's hard to be a problem solver when you don't have expertise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over time, we all develop a bigger and bigger tool chest of potential ways to make something work, not by having what you need on hand, but by making do with creative ways, workarounds.
Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of that. We do that a lot too with boaters, just to make the trip keep going. They might be out there and they can't, they don't have the luxury of coming back into town, or they want to keep going. They're on a 2-month trip, or it could be a longer trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, it goes back to this model where there's expertise through repetition, and then being able to help people and not have to say to them, oh, you got to start from scratch. I mean, that's easy. Tearing something completely down and building it. Yes, of course, that's an option. But sometimes that option is not on the table regardless of money, right? Like, it's just not on the table. They got to keep doing it. You're right. Supporting clients and boaters to be able to keep boating, because sometimes, it's not worth stopping. I give as an example all the time. I'm like, listen, if you're going to live to 100 and you can start boating at the age of 1 and you have 100 summers, that's not enough summers in a lifetime to go boating. And most of us don't start boating at 1 or 10 or 20 or 30 for various reasons. Some some of us boat, start boating at 50, 45, 55, 65. Now you don't have 100 summers anymore, right? You don't have 100 seasons. And I think that's sort of I always give that sense of urgency to fellow boaters. I'm like, no, no, you got to go out boating. We got to find a way to get you to have your summer, have your vacation, do something. And then, when we have time, we'll address it long term so that you don't miss a season. It's easy, obviously. They're not boating the season. You can drill it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or in a day or 3 days, and that's fine. But sometimes you don't want to be stuck at port when, all the weather is cooperating, you've got crew on board, you have a destination. You've got to find a way to help boaters today so that they can make, the big move later on. And that buys you so much goodwill, right? Because it's so easy to say to someone that comes in and say, you got a brand new, you got to get everything. Well, yeah, of course, that's easy. But show me how you would get me there short term. And I think I agree. I've done that countless times, and the payback is huge because they know that's honesty, right?
Yeah.
Not everything has to be brand new from the moment you have a conversation with someone.
Yeah. Sure.
How are you going back a little bit on the concept of learning and community? So you've talked about your online portal as a way for people to get a sort of a budgetary estimate to sort of right at the go be able to plan. I mean, that's huge. I mean, everybody's got a list longer than they can potentially muster in a year financially. Most people, even if they have the money, they're like, I just can't spend it that quickly. It's never ending. So the budgetary part is really good. Are you finding that boaters are interacting with one another online about your product in a way? Like, is there sort of, yeah, tell me a little bit about how are they helping out? Like, I've noticed on our YouTube, for example, and I find that to me, that's where it's almost like children in the sense of investing time in your children so that you educate, you allow them to grow, and then to see people help one another, without me interjecting. I think that's one of the best parts about it. I'm like, wow, like now I've got other people helping other people.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this sort of snowballing effect, or domino, but in the right direction. You're like, yeah, you spotted it. Thanks for reminding another boulder, because maybe I'm not going to get to that answer for another 24 or 48 hours, and they're helping each other.
Yeah.
And to me, that forum or that community where people are leaning in and saying, oh, well, you don't know, okay, this is that, or check out this, or oh, well, actually and it's funny how many people that are demonstrating their opinions are actually, to the large part, they're actually bang on. And I'm going, yeah, perfectly said, or oh my God, I didn't even think of that. Like, thanks for adding to the conversation. Are you finding that level of engagement between boater to boaters as well for your community?
We see it in kind of two spots. We see it when we post the kind of vlog Ask Precision Sales videos. We get a lot of interaction, and thanks for answering that. I had the same question. That's perfect. And then we also see it outside of our kind of digital community, but on the Facebook groups for Beneteau 40s, those individual groups on social media. Those guys, I've got a cabin in 27. It's amazing. You got a question, you post it on those groups. There's 8 responses from those guys with answers to, I had a battery question. Where were you? Anyway, I had a battery question that, I can't remember what it was, but it was a simple answer, and it just wasn't coming to me. And within a minute and a half, I had 3 guys taking videos and pictures of what they've got on their boat, and this is the way I solved it, and that kind of stuff. And it's an amazing way to get like-minded people to help each other.
Yeah,
that's kind of what we're trying to develop in the community around precision sales, but we see it also on Reddit and Facebook and those user groups, owners groups.
Yeah,
they're really
I wouldn't have bought a boat without honestly.
Yep.
When I bought my boat in 2006, April Fool's Day, I don't think I would have the courage to buy a boat without coming from a boating family, without having really any friends that had a boat. You know, I was basically early 30s. I was 31 at the time. You know, I don't think I would have done it without knowing that I would have the support. And really, that's the way I described it at the time. The support of the community through those forums, SailNet, Cruising World, all these sort of different, the magazines. I don't think I could have been able to, that learning curve seemed so steep. It felt so daunting. I was like, how am I going to, what happens when, and I was just like thinking all the scenarios that could play out. And I was like, how am I going to learn all that information without, who am I going to talk this? You know, I can't talk to, you know, I have friends that are boaters and friends that aren't boaters. Well, at the time I had no boating friends. And I was so intimidated by the thought of doing it on my own completely, you know, without a sounding board, without sharing, without reading. And you can become pretty like, I like reading so much content, even problems that you don't have on your boat. You know, oh, I'm going to probably have that problem later on.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? You go like it might not be relevant to you today, but you better record that there is a solution and you read it somewhere because eventually you're going to find that problem. You're like, oh, right, yeah. And then you go and you're like, problem solved, done. And you're like, and that's I think the beauty of the community is it gives us the courage to undertake something that honestly most people otherwise would be very challenged to do as well as we're doing it right now without other people helping us on that journey, because it's almost like you need to be a pro to run a boat really well unless you have a community of people that are helping you doing it.
When I used to teach people how to drive yachts, so they would be new boaters, and I was maybe 23 or 24, and some of these boats were really big, and in certain times bigger than boats that I have even driven. And every client that I had at the time would come to me with that nerve. They're unsure, but it's like any community. You get out there when your bounce thruster shuts out on the dock and you can't get into your spot. Who cares? Go to another bigger open spot and take it. And you know what? If you honk your horn once, there's going to be 5 guys out on the dock if they didn't already see you there. And there's not really that many times where you are alone. And you know, last year I was over at Sidney Spit, and this young family, they had an older boat. The engine had an issue. Well, he's sitting there trying to get the boat to the dock. There were so many people helping him get the boat to the dock. And when he got to the dock, you know, I went over, I had all the tools, everything I could need to fix anything. And I said, okay, what do you need? What can I help with? And I'm not a mechanic, but we dove into fixing the engine and what was wrong with it. And if I wasn't there, it didn't matter because there's 2 other on the same dock with the tools, and you're not really alone. And I don't think it's that different online. You think and it's your hobby, especially in Canada where we're not necessarily boating the whole year. In the winter, you're online, you're researching and doing things, and a lot of community comes out of that. I think it's pretty much aligned with what you sometimes see at the docks and at the marinas and anchorages. I mean, you get that feeling, right?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's just honestly, it's yeah. There's so much negative sometimes out there, and you go back on the boating world, you're like, okay, this is what a community would feel like. You're like, okay, this is my happy place right here. You know, like people helping people. That's just, I mean, it's a throwback to a world that sometimes feels so far elusive away in every day. You're like there, and it's like, okay, that's part of my, you know, it's part of my life, you know, because we're lucky, we're fortunate, we get to do this not only for the weekend, but also in the weekday, we're also helping boaters. So, I mean, that's what makes all the hard work so much more worth it, is being of service. The so the communities then are definitely sharing for you as well, And we thought, yeah, that to me is really when you know that you've got something going that's really positive, because it's incredible how knowledgeable even non-professionals can be. There's a lot of people out there that have the ability to digest, process information in a way, even though they haven't done it 1,000 times, they're actually retaining the good stuff. And they
Mhm.
might not have done, like on our side, we've done thousands upon, and I deal with boaters that have done one boat. It's their boat. But man, oh man, do they understand it. They have an ability to learn quickly,
Mhm.
be able to process, things that are true and maybe not so true. And then they're out there and they're actually, helping other boaters have a better boat. And I think they probably get a lot of self worth out of that too,
Sure.
even though they're not compensated for it. They're just, again, in their spare time. If you've got an hour, half an hour, what are you going to do with it? You can watch potentially TV, or you can start interacting on YouTube, watching a video, adding comments, helping people. And again, it's pretty powerful stuff, um, that boaters are able to help for one another. Before we close this, is there anything that we haven't talked about on your side that you would like to bring up during this podcast, Doc Talk? Anything on your that comes to mind?
I think we covered most of it. One of the things that you asked a question about YouTube, and I kind of answered around our company and what we put out into the internet as far as information. One of the other aspects that we focused on in the last several years is trying to build that larger community. And so we found the YouTube creators, the guys that are out there sailing around the world,
Mm,
big boats, little boats, all kinds of stuff.
living it.
Yeah, and they're living it and doing it, and um, you know, influencers, I guess they're called out there as well, right? So we started working with some of these guys, helping them buy sales, giving them little discounts and those types of things. But what we found as a spin-off is all of these people that are out there living it and sailing and showing their lives out there. They've really started to take the guy that was a day sailor and inspired him to become the weekend warrior. And the weekend warrior became a guy that now does a 2-week vacation with his family on his 27-foot boat. And then they start sailing down the coast. Then they start going into the Caribbean, and now they retire on their boats. Like, they've started to inspire this whole group of cruisers that are graduating through different boats, different sizes of boats, and different adventures, because they're building confidence and getting inspired by all these guys that are putting their lives out there on YouTube. And
Yeah, and visually you see it too. I think I mean, there's certainly something to be said about. I mean, we were able to read before about all these people that did it,
yeah,
but to see it as well, and especially when it's done and then the story, and it's curated, but not so much. You get to see all the good and the bad.
Yeah.
It's extremely inspiring, and not a lot of us get to be able to mimic someone. We don't have someone like that. And, it's not like I had friends from high school that went to sail around the world. It's not like a typical journey that everyone does.
Yeah.
So how do you learn from these people if you're not really engaging with them day to day? And I think that's where the medium of YouTube is a way for people to go, okay, you're not typically in my orbit. People fall in love with boating and they're maybe not from the coast.
yeah,
It has nothing to do with necessarily where you're born or what family you grew up or the type of friends you had when you were a kid. Like, eventually you might get the bug and you might have no one in your circle that is into that.
yeah,
And I think that's where the YouTubers are really helping people not only imagine what the dream is like, but being able to see it. It's not the same, but they're getting a taste for it in a medium that allows them to sort of envision what it could be like for them. And that's also, like you say, it's inspiring because you can get the courage to go up from, an afternoon sail, day sail, weekend, week, month. And then maybe some people decide to take the leap and go, cruising for a year or two, or even for a season. Even 3 months is a big
oh
deal.
yeah, oh yeah,
My like even just my wife, who hasn't been the biggest boater, she never boated when she was younger, and our kids, we watch these sailing channels, and we're so engaged and get so excited, and all they want to do is go sailing. And they
Yeah.
want to go to the Galap. They know all the islands. They got to go to the Galapagos. When are we going there? When and like it, they're young, and my wife's going, "Wow, that is pretty cool." And it's you can see it right at home because I grew up on a boat. I had my first birthday on a boat. I was like I lived on boats. Like I that was it. But everyone around me didn't. And it's so cool because I started getting Jillian to watch some of these shows with me, and I got to know these guys in the shows, and I've had a lot of fun because we can connect. We have a lot of fun. I'm friends with a lot of them as I get more and more opportunity. I go sail with them and have fun with it. My wife's sitting there going and watching this, going, "Wow, I want to boat. I'm going to be a boat. I am in."
Yeah, so true. Yeah, and it's a different, if you're going to spend your leisure time, again, you can watch something on TV. It's tailored like when we were growing up, cable for the masses, lowest common denominator. What's going to be sort of not necessarily the most interesting to everyone, but interesting enough to enough people. And then you look at YouTube and you look at all this content and you're like, wow, you're going to have content that you would never find on TV. It doesn't matter. Like, I love history shows. I'm listening to philosophers debate stuff. There's no way that could have ever been on TV, maybe community TV. But even then, that's only one channel, two channel, three channel. You think about the number of channels that are out there. Sailing is one of them. Boating, it doesn't matter. Again, people are doing rental projects on their boats. That's another. It's almost infinity channels when you think about it. There's just not enough time for you to absorb all these sort of lives and sort of journeys that all these boaters are doing in different segments. And that's just our little world. And then that expands everything else. I mean, there's everything about everything. And I think it removes the sense of loneliness when you're faced with problems that you don't know how to resolve. And that's what it comes down to, is that since sometimes those problems are pretty complicated, they're not readily, they're not figured out. You have a problem, but you don't know how you're going to go about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the community is huge. It goes, okay, I might not know, but start Googling, start going through YouTube, start doing this. And eventually you'll find an answer to your specific problem, because most likely someone's gone through it.
On this in the same situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, anyways, I want to thank you both, Darryl and Ron, from Precision Sales, for joining me today, talking about boating. Honestly, I could do this. Talking about boating has got to be the coolest freaking thing, and doing that as part of our jobs is just awesome. I want to thank you for being here and sharing your passion and how your company is succeeding in this new world that we have with online collaboration and being able to go way beyond our geography. And for all the listeners out there, please let us know what you think about this conversation. How does it relate to you? We'd love to hear your story and add your 2 cents to the conversation. So thanks to you both for joining me here today. And I wish you all some safe sailing out there on the waters. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff.